Safety Edge podcast, where safety leaders sharpen their edge. I'm Charles Edgar, your safety leadership coach. In this podcast, we explore the real dilemmas safety leaders face on site and in the workplace. Not textbook examples, not perfect scenarios, but the challenging, uncomfortable human moments when there's no obvious right answer and the pressure is real. We are continuing with Season 2, where we explore voice, silence, and psychological safety. Today, we will unpack a high-stakes dilemma most leaders are familiar with. When speaking up feels riskier than staying silent. Picture this: you are in a high-level safety meeting with VPs, directors, and senior management representatives in the room. An incident had occurred, minor but preventable. A frontline supervisor had previously raised concerns about the very issue that triggered the incident. Those early warnings had somehow been overlooked. Now, as the meeting begins, a mid-level operations manager starts framing the narrative, subtly shifting blame, downplaying the issues to cover his own inaction. The frontline supervisor knows the truth and wants to speak up, but he hesitates and shifts uncomfortably, showing signs of confusion and discomfort with what's playing out in the room. You are the safety lead, and you are caught in the middle. You notice his frustration. He's in a dilemma. If he cuts in and speaks freely, it may challenge management's understanding of the incident. If he doesn't intervene, his insights may remain unspoken, risking the learning opportunity the team needs. The exact moment silence becomes a choice is when the supervisor opens his mouth but pauses. You can almost feel him weighing his options.
Will I be blamed if I contradict the official account? Am I exposing myself to criticism? Is it safer to just stay quiet?
As the safety leader, this is the moment you must decide how to invite voice without causing defensiveness, undermining authority, or damaging relationships. And you ponder your options. Support the supervisor so trust is preserved, or should you navigate the political tightrope with the operations manager? This is the moment where silence stops being passive and becomes a deliberate choice. And if you decide to act, you're left wondering, what do I say? And how will it land in this room? But if you choose not to act, another question follows. How will the supervisor interpret your silence? And will you still be able to stand in front of them tomorrow and talk about safety with credibility? Now you are in a dilemma. Now let's unpack the dilemma. The meeting begins. Everyone is seated. Permits, reports, and incident documentation are on the table. Words like fully investigated and corrective actions in place are being thrown around and deliberately repeated to make it stick. The operations manager starts presenting his narrative.
The issue was minor and promptly managed. Any earlier reports were addressed appropriately. No further action required.
The supervisor fidgets, heart racing, thoughts spinning, probably thinking,
They're ignoring the warning I submitted weeks ago. If I speak up, will it be seen as troublemaking? Will I damage my credibility?
As safety lead, you notice the tension and know the truth is being distorted. This is a high-pressure moment. Silence is tempting. Speaking up carries risk. Professional, political, reputational. And yet, staying silent perpetuates a hidden hazard. This is a true leadership dilemma because the narrative is tidy. Silence feels safer than honesty, especially when VPs and directors are present. Truth is at risk, and learning is being blocked. Every time a leader hesitates, another opportunity for psychological safety is lost. People start calculating risk, weighing the consequences of speaking versus staying silent. The risk of being blamed, the risk of slowing the meeting, the risk of angering senior management. And for the safety lead, the pressure is doubled. Supporting the supervisor means validating their concerns publicly. Challenging the operations manager could spark conflict, risking future cooperation. Remaining neutral and allowing the cover-up to stand could potentially undermine the safety culture. And what do most leaders do in moments like this? Here's what typically happens. First, many leaders default to protecting the narrative. When uncomfortable information surfaces or threatens to surface, the instinct is to control the story, to frame the issue tightly, to explain it quickly and move past it. The unspoken goal becomes, let's not alarm the room, let's not distract leadership, let's not make this bigger than it needs to be. And in doing so, truth gets edited. Second, leaders often confuse alignment with agreement. Heads are nodding. No one interrupts. No one challenges the explanations being offered. From the outside, it looks like unity. It looks professional, controlled. But inside the room, people are calculating quietly. Is this the moment to speak? What will it cost me if I do? Who will this expose? Who will this protect? And silence starts to feel safer than honesty. Third, leaders unintentionally reward confidence over curiosity. The person who speaks clearly, who sounds certain, who offers a clean explanation. Meanwhile, the person who hesitates feels like they are introducing friction. And under pressure, friction is the enemy. So leaders lean towards decisiveness. They praise clarity. They thank people for keeping things moving. And slowly, the room learns. Fourth, and this is the most dangerous part, leaders rely on processes to replace voice. They trust the investigation protocol, the reporting system. They assume if it really mattered, it would have shown up formally. If it was serious, someone would have escalated it earlier. But the system only captures what people feel safe enough to report. They don't capture hesitation. They don't capture early warnings. They don't capture the concerns people swallow to protect relationships, careers, or reputations. So leaders walk out of the room believing, we handled that well, while risk quietly walks out with them, unaddressed, unapologetic. And that's the paradox. Most leaders believe they are being calm, professional, and responsible in these moments. But what people experience is something else entirely. This is not the room where you tell the full truth. This is not the moment you challenge the story. This is not safe. And that's how silence becomes a habit. Not because people don't care, but because leadership has taught them quietly when to speak and when not to. Now here's where great leaders diverge. Not because they face less pressure, but because they respond to pressure differently. Great leaders don't rush to protect the narrative. They recognize that a clean story isn't the same as a true one. So instead of closing the conversation down, they slow it down just enough to let the reality catch up. They understand something subtle but critical. In high-powered rooms, speed amplifies silence. So they deliberately create space, not for blame, but for clarity. They read the room differently. They notice who hasn't spoken, who looks uncomfortable, who stopped mid-sentence, who glanced away when conclusion was offered. And instead of moving on, they get curious. Not publicly confrontational, not emotionally charged, but calmly and deliberately curious. They understand that confidence can be rehearsed, but insight often arrives tentatively. So when someone hesitates, they don't interrupt, they don't rescue, they don't reinterpret. They let the uncertainty breathe. Because uncertainty is often where learning lives. And perhaps most importantly, they know procedures matter, investigation matters, control matter, but they also know this. No system can capture what people are afraid to say. So this is exactly where a coaching mindset changes everything. Because coaching doesn't demand the truth, it invites it. It doesn't escalate conflicts. It lowers the temperature enough for honesty to surface. It allows leaders to hold integrity, preserve relationships, and surface reality without forcing people into corners. The real question is, did leadership make it safer to speak or safer to stay silent? Now let's see it through the coaching lens. The safety review is nearing its close. The operations manager has just finished presenting the summary slide. The narrative subtly shifts responsibility towards system gaps and unforeseen conditions. There is a pause. The chairman is about to move on, and as safety leader, you intervene. Calmly, steady, and respectfully, you say, "Before we close this item, may I ask one clarifying question, not to challenge the outcome, but to strengthen our learning?" And the chairman nods and says,
"Okay, go ahead."
You ask the first question to open up the space. In reviewing this timeline, I'm curious, were there any early signals or concerns raised before the day of the incident that didn't quite reach this forum? The room shifts slightly. This is not confrontational, but it disrupts the neatness of the story. The operations manager responds in a measured tone.
There were some routine observations logged, but nothing that met the threshold for escalation at the time.
That's a safe answer, carefully worded. And your second question is, "That's helpful. Can I check something then for those closer to the work?" Now you turn slightly towards the frontline supervisor and without putting him on the spot, you say, "When those observations were raised, how clear was it what would happen next?" Now this is the moment. Silence thickens and the supervisor hesitates. And after a brief pause, he says carefully,
Well, I raised it through the normal channel. I wasn't sure how urgent it was being treated, and I didn't want to escalate unnecessarily.
Now you ask your third question, shifting ownership without pointing. That uncertainty is important. Then you turn back to the room. Out of curiosity, when concerns sit in that gray area, how confident are we that our systems make it clear who decides whether to act or wait? This reframes the issue away from individuals without erasing responsibility. The operations manager responds in a slight tension.
As it stands, we rely on professional judgment. We can't escalate everything.
And you affirm, absolutely, and judgment matters. Now at this stage, the executives lean in because this is now about leadership and not blame. At this point, you pivot, preserving relationships. What I'm hearing isn't failure of procedure. It's a moment where hesitation met pressure and silence felt safer than uncertainty. That's not about competence, it's about conditions. So the learning question for us isn't who missed this, it's what made it easier to wait than to speak up. And how do we change that next time? And now, this removes the need for anyone to defend themselves. At this stage, the supervisor's dignity is protected, and he responds more confidently now.
To be honest, I wasn't sure raising it again would help. Things were moving really fast.
Now you say gently. That tells us something important. And looking towards the operations manager, you ask, how might we make it clearer, especially under pressure, that raising uncertainty is an expectation and not a disruption? Now this is a critical move. You've established shared ownership without public indictment. Now the chairman responds thoughtfully.
That's a fair point. We don't want people filtering risk because they're worried about slowing things down.
The narrative has shifted safely, and you respond to close the conversation. Exactly, because the real risk isn't in the issue itself. It's when people decide it's safer not to mention it. And if we want early warnings, we have to make early conversations safe. Now the room goes silent again, but this time it's reflective, not defensive. Why this approach works? This approach works because integrity is preserved. The truth surfaces without accusation. The supervisor feels protected, not sacrificed. The operations manager isn't humiliated, but accountability is gently reintroduced. The executives walk away with a learning, not discomfort, and psychological safety has been modeled in real time. This is what leadership looks like when silence is handled with care and truth is invited, not forced. So here's the key insight from today's episode. Silence is not just the absence of words. Silence is a choice. Often, it's chosen to avoid risk, personal risk, professional risk, or even political risk. And under pressure, people weigh those risks carefully before deciding whether to speak up or not. The tone set by leadership shapes whether voice feels safe or dangerous. How you respond to questions, concerns, or feedback sends a signal. A quick dismissal or impatience says, "Don't speak up." On the other hand, curiosity, patience, and active listening says your voice matters. Coaching questions, simple, open, and reflective questions are indeed powerful. They surface truth before escalating conflict. They help people share what they know and clarify the facts, all while maintaining trust. Psychological safety can still exist, even in high-stakes meetings with executives in the room. It doesn't just vanish because authority is present. Leaders who focus on inquiry instead of judgment can create space for honest dialogue and early learning. Truth and learning don't have to come at the expense of trust. Confronting uncomfortable facts can happen while still preserving relationships and credibility. The balance is what builds integrity, accountability, and continuous improvement. And finally, strong safety cultures don't rely on compliance alone. Procedures and rules are essential, yes, but they aren't enough. Real safety comes from conversations where speaking up feels safer than staying silent even when pressure is high and stakes are higher. When leaders pause, ask, and genuinely listen, small signals surface early before they harden into incidents. That moment, that choice, that is the edge. As we close out this episode, take a moment to pause and reflect. Have you ever found yourself in a similar dilemma? How did you respond in that moment? And what shaped your choice? With the insight from today's conversation, how might you handle it differently next time? Where might leadership reactions, even unintentionally, be making silence feel more safer than speaking up? And what's one coaching question you could ask today to open up space for honesty, voice, and learning? If you had a key takeaway from today's episode, share your reflection in the comment section. Your insight might help another leader create voice where it's currently absent. While here, make sure to follow and subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. And don't forget to invite a friend or colleague to listen along with you. Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Safety Edge podcast. I'm Charles Edgar, your safety leadership coach. And until next time, keep leading, keep learning, and keep sharpening your edge. Bye for now.
Brought to you by the Safety Edge platform, an independent leadership and safety learning platform, building leadership capacity one conversation at a time. Find us wherever you get your podcasts